I'll tell you, it worked so hard to rehearse asking you all to slide to the middle of your row to make room for more people. But I guess we won't have to do that this morning. I think everybody had a big night last night, a lot of neat receptions, and I appreciate you being here today. My name's Dave Cope, I'm with Cisco, and we want to talk about the journey to the cloud from really the data center to the edge and beyond. And so with that, let me get my clicker. Again, I'm Dave Cope. I'm responsible at Cisco for market development for Cisco's cloud products. Not only our cloud products, but also our strategic integrated solutions that often span multiple parts of the Cisco organization. And you'll certainly see that come together in today's session. I'll then be joined by John McAbel. He's the Cisco person responsible for our Microsoft, Azure Stack, and other partnership activities we have with Microsoft. And then Greg Ostrowski, that's a part of Cisco, but is a part of formerly our AppDynamics organization. So I like to start this way. This is actually a slide from our CEO, Chuck Robbins' keynote presentation that he's given recently. And when we work with customers around the world to try to understand their key transformational activities, there's a whole host of priorities, from creating new meaningful experiences by building more rapidly building applications to enhance customer experience, to enhance employee experience with information technology, drive efficiencies, to security. We all know that the very foundation of security with things like the edge, containers, the cloud, a lot of things in the security world are changing. Unlocking the power of data. How do you look for non-obvious relationships in data to be able to better run your business and anticipate issues and take advantage of opportunities? Reinventing the network. We'll talk a lot about this. What is the network, which seems like sort of an old-fashioned thing? What does it mean when it's made up of maybe 4 different public cloud providers, 2 different private cloud stacks spanning 25 regions around the world? What does the network really have to think about in this sort of multi-world, multi-cloud environment? And finally, what I'm really going to talk a lot about is today's multi-cloud world and what we hear from our customers. I've actually been in the industry long enough, sometimes I hate to say it, but I can remember at early startup sitting around with Tim Berners-Lee wondering if this brand new thing called the internet would actually take off. And I think we'd all agree that the internet has fundamentally changed the way people access information technology. And despite how impressive the internet is, you could look at the cloud, and it's actually, I would say, changed the landscape even faster than the internet. Today, cloud doesn't even seem, frankly, that exciting. Everybody talks about clouds. And when I talk about cloud, to me, it's private clouds, it's public clouds. To me, they're almost all the same. It's just about where they're placed and how you use those environments. But when we look at the cloud, itself has gone through a rapid evolution from skepticism. As a matter of fact, I don't know, probably almost nobody knows that almost exactly 1 month from now, the first commercial public cloud came out of beta in the Pacific Northwest, I'll just say, on October 23rd, 10 years ago. So it really marks the 10-year anniversary of the cloud. But we've gone from skepticism. I can remember truly people thinking that the cloud was just another IT fad, to experimentation, running sort of non-mission critical applications on the cloud, to debate then, hey, this cloud might be cool. I wonder if I should use private cloud or public cloud. I wonder which public cloud is the best. To today, the answer I find is all of the above. So you can look at a lot of different surveys. The average Global 2000 company has 4 different cloud providers, and that does not include their SaaS applications. So it truly is a multi-cloud world, and customers are looking for a way to logically place workloads where they best reside. As a matter of fact, this is a survey that IDC does every single year. It just came out literally 2 weeks ago, and it shows that about 94% of all companies either are or are planning to use multi-cloud environments. This is up from 84% the year before, and it's up from 74% 2 years ago. So you say, well, why? This seems like everybody's doing it, and the simple answer is innovation and speed. How do I utilize new tools that are coming from these cloud environments to rapidly build new innovative applications to drive value to customers, to drive efficiencies internally, and how do I do this faster and faster and faster? And being able to utilize sort of the diversity that clouds represent provides a lot of these new capabilities that we'll talk about. Now, as cool as the cloud sounds, out of the same exact survey, what they found is that while everybody wants to use a multi-cloud environment, only about 14% feel that they have an optimized strategy to take advantage of the multi-cloud world. And so this is a little bit of irony, and the question is why? And what we find is that it's because the cloud isn't just the cloud. It's a lot of different things. First of all, interacting with the cloud can be people, can be devices. It can include private clouds, virtual private clouds, managed private clouds, public clouds, and really today, no standardization across these environments. And as clouds continue to rapidly innovate, I think you could argue that cloud environments are becoming more diverse, not more the same. And so this creates a great deal of complexity around very traditional disciplines that frankly look very boring and we've all talked about for our entire career. Networking, security, analytics, management, we understand that for our data centers, but what does this mean when you have to manage these principles across environments that you both control and you don't control? They take on a whole different definition. And so this is what Cisco's position in the cloud is really, really all about, both through organic development and through aggressive acquisitions, including AppDynamics that you'll hear from today. What Cisco does and its focus is actually quite simple. We're the largest IT vendor in the world that doesn't have our own cloud. So in fact, we're in the business of allowing you to securely deploy and manage the entire life cycle of both traditional and new cloud native like Kubernetes and containerized applications across any combination of private and public clouds. It's really that simple, is allowing you to objectively decide based on your business criteria where you want to deploy those workloads, and we'll give you all of the tools to securely do that and manage it. Today, Cisco supports 16 different private and public clouds, including our event host, Microsoft, with Azure Stack, Azure, and Azure for Government. What this means is that with the Cisco platform, you can in fact deploy any of your applications, again, traditional or new cloud native, to and between any of these environments. I came in actually through one of these acquisitions that I spoke of earlier through the Clicker acquisition 2.5 years ago, and we focused on cloud management. And one of the things that I saw is that, geez, Cisco has a lot of stuff, but it actually has too much stuff. It's really confusing. And so what Cisco's worked hard on in the last, I'd say, 1.5 years is really compartmentalizing its solutions aligned around different functional areas and certainly different, I would say, economic buyers or functional responsibilities. We have what we call the multi-cloud portfolio. It's Cloud Advisory, Cloud Consume, Cloud Connect, and Cloud Protect. Cloud Advisory is a set of service offerings that helps you to try to understand which applications to migrate to the cloud, which clouds make most sense based on the business criteria for that application. Cloud Consume is once you create a private cloud and or deploy to a public cloud, how do I now deploy and then manage the entire life cycle of those applications on that cloud? Cloud Connect is now how do I create a secure connection between my data center and a cloud? And finally, Cloud Protect envelops this entire environment with world-class security. And I won't, of course, go through the offerings, but these are conveniently packaged with a variety of Cisco offerings. You can either sort of consume, if you will, all of these offerings, or based on the maturity of your project or your company in its journey to the cloud, you can decide to maybe just add cloud security, for example. So easy to consume, start simple, and grow. And really our focus is, you'll find, and I think it's going to be a fresh change for Cisco, is to stop always just knocking on the door and say, let me tell you about this product. But in fact, all of these solutions are aligned to what we have found to be core initiatives that our customers are focused on. Core initiatives like, how do I build and manage a hybrid cloud? How do I deploy and manage applications in a public cloud environment? Maybe it's as simple as, hey, I've got, an office application and I want a well-conditioned connection between that and the public cloud. So these are all aligned to really help you focus on your business initiatives, not just about consuming point products. And so hopefully I've been able to sort of set a foundation and give you a sense for Cisco's approach to the cloud. Really allow you to use Cisco as that platform to deploy and manage your applications wherever your business priorities drive them. And so with that, John, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Dave. We'll rehearse this, of course. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking time to be here today. What I would like to do over the next 30 minutes or so is take you on a bit of a journey that started with last year at Ignite when we announced the Microsoft Azure Stack solution on Cisco's unified computing system hardware and how it's grown over time. And what I like to do along the way is give you some flavor for why people are choosing Cisco, why Microsoft brought Azure Stack to market, and some of the key reasons why we hope you'll take a closer look at Cisco as you evaluate your hybrid cloud needs with regards to Microsoft Azure. Now, recently, our former CEO, John Chambers, got some press by making a statement that said that in 10 years, half of the Fortune 500 companies in the world will be completely wiped out, totally out of business. And it's kind of a bit of a scary statement, don't you think? Kind of makes you want to run out and check your 401ks and see where you're invested in, make sure you can retire okay. What he was reflecting was this wave of digital transformation that's impacted almost every industry. And what has really caused us for workloads to move from what were once siloed and specific system architectures to the virtualization of combining workloads onto server platforms to now this movement up to the cloud. And what it's really caused is for the applications themselves to become the real drivers in business today. Developers have a much stronger say than ever before in terms of how IT services are going to be delivered both internally within the organization and out to customers. And then finally, everyone's got a multi-cloud strategy. I won't even ask you to raise your hands because I know everyone here has a multi-cloud strategy. We've seen this digital transformation in our daily lives. And if you came to this conference 5 years ago, landed at the airport, many of us would get into a taxi, we'd be holding a newspaper or Sports Illustrated in our hand, and we'd be thinking about, well, Paul McCartney just came out with a new record a couple weeks ago. I might run out and get that CD. Now, of course, you land at the airport, it's an Uber or a Lyft, you've got your newspaper on your iPhone, and you're now thinking about streaming that new record from Paul McCartney on Spotify or Pandora. Just some examples of how industries that we really didn't think were going to change have been totally dumped on their heads by this wave of digital transformation. What this has caused for IT managers is to be able to think about different challenges that this transformation causes. Data sovereignty becomes key. Regulatory influences have come in, such as GDPR in Europe, in which a company can be fined up to 4% of their total revenues they generated that year if they don't comply with European guidelines and regulations. In fact, the senior executives, the data security officers of those companies could be held personally liable if their companies don't follow the specific guidelines. Now, we talk about data sovereignty. There are certain industries, such as government, financial, medical, where if it's not illegal, it would be highly unethical if data were to somehow, some way get into the public domain. I may not want everyone here to know that I take 40 milligrams of Lipitor on a daily basis as a preventative for cholesterol. You know, my friends within Cisco would start giving me a hard time, telling me I need to, eat better, get more exercise, drink less beer. That's drinking less beer that's really hard, by the way. The customization of software. All of us have heritage applications. These are applications that have been in our environments for some time. The developer who originally developed it may have left the company, and now management wants to take advantage of new interfaces. You want to take an Android phone and make that the input device for your sales force. Well, the application's got to be able to accept that input. There are development tools on the Azure Public Cloud that can help you do that, but how do you bring those tools into your data center, and how can you make those tools available to developers so they can do the work on the applications necessary to input those new development tools. And then, of course, there's latency issues. And we can think about certain industries like mining, where you're completely cut off from the internet, or hardened data centers like we have with the United States government. But there's parts of the world today that still have issues with having constant, secure communication to the internet. You could call it flaky, but in some underdeveloped countries, that's the challenge that many companies face as they broaden to more of a global view, a global infrastructure of how they want to deliver IT services. So that's some of the key reasons why Microsoft partnered with Cisco to develop the Cisco integrated system for Microsoft Azure Stack. Two key aspects of this system you need to keep in mind. Number one is that all of the elements of the system itself are sold as an appliance-like BOM. That includes the top-of-rack switches, the fabric interconnects in our case, and all the servers. You have choice of how many servers, starting with 4. You can choose your Intel processor, the amount of memory, the amount of storage, what type of storage you like to have, but all the other elements of the configuration are defaulted into the BOM itself. Secondly is that Microsoft has a continuous innovation model, which means every single month you're going to have update to your Azure Stack system. Gone are the days where you could take a new version of code, put it into a pre-production environment, test it for 6, 9 months, and then put it into production. With Azure Stack, you are going to be updating your production system every month. So unless your organization is ready to accommodate that challenge and understand that's what the IT organization needs to do, you may not be a customer ready yet for Azure Stack. Now, we've been very successful in selling Azure Stack literally around the world, and there's a number of key criteria that people have told us that they've chosen Cisco. And if you start thinking about the underlying architecture to drive a hybrid cloud solution, some of the criteria you might think about is that, well, it'd be really great if the underlying infrastructure was designed from the ground up to drive virtualized workloads, both performance, manageability thereof. It'd be great if all of the elements of the system came from a single vendor, not just OEMing, but I mean literally designing those elements, manufacturing those elements, selling them, combining them in solutions, and then supporting. That way you have complete control of all the roadmap, of all those elements in the configuration, all the management interfaces, so then you can build management software on top to completely automate the setup of the hardware and be able to take you down the road as your cluster or scale unit grows into multiple scale units in multiple regions. Are the tools available for you to be able to take advantage of that? Be able to maintain company standards. You've made standards in networking, many of you with Nexus technology, thank you very much. Also, IT managers have made standards in system racks, where you want to maintain the system rack in your data center. You don't want a rack shipped from the hardware vendor to accommodate a specific solution. You want to be able to have configuration flexibility. Only buy the resources you need and not anymore. Performance always matters. You think about this. You know, if you buy a car, you're either going to talk about the miles per gallon, like on a Prius, or in my case, I've got a Mustang GT, so I'm always talking about the 5-liter V8 engine in the car, right? Performance always matters. And so if you only have a single cluster to run Azure Stack today, don't you want that cluster to have the highest level of performance possible so you get the most bang for your buck out of your investment into Azure Stack? You ought to be able to electronically move calls between the support queue of the hardware vendor and the Microsoft case exchange system. Those calls should move freely in between, including any data that you provide. That way, you as the customer aren't caught in the middle of two big support organizations. You also need to be able to maintain the freedom to purchase the Azure services from wherever you're purchasing them today. It could be directly from Microsoft, or it could be from one of the many cloud service providers that Microsoft has today. And it would be good that the vendor had an idea, a thought as to what day 2, day 3, post-installation of what the Azure Stack environment can do for you. Could they provide applications, services to help you grow that environment and solve more of your IT challenges? When you take a look at this criteria, we'd argue that Cisco has leadership across this whole portfolio of criteria that you could be looking at to choose a vendor to partner with for Azure Stack. Now, a year ago at this conference, we were one of 4 vendors that announced a Cisco system for Azure Stack. And we launched it on our M4-based systems, our Intel Broadwell-based systems, and it had hybrid storage, so it had spinning disk and NVMe at the cache tier. We offered it in 4 to 12 node configurations and any increment in between. We had as standard NVMe and a 40 gigabit Ethernet backplane, which remains the biggest bandwidth of any vendor in the industry today in terms of the backplane. We've also were able to talk about, and we have delivered, both connected Azure Stack systems to the Azure Public Cloud, and also disconnected environments in which the system itself was set up and completely cut off from the internet. All the updates are manually moved over to the system, and so that data center, that Azure Stack system, is in a hardened database, and it can be absolutely assured that it can't be tampered with from outside forces. We've actually had very strong sales in all the geos. In fact, Cisco today continues to sell the Azure Stack system in more countries than anyone else in the world today. And that's according to Microsoft's website, 92 countries and counting. About midway through the last fiscal year, we launched 2 new solutions. One was an updated solution to the hybrid storage system we have. We now have the M5, if you're familiar with our terminology for Cisco servers. So now we have the Purley-based systems in our portfolio. And we also decided to come out with an all-flash-based system, because many of you said, I want to have the maximum performance possible for Azure Stack. And so the all-flash-based system is our answer to that. We've also had great success across many different vertical markets. 14 vertical markets we've sold Azure Stack into. And so as we continue to sell and broaden Azure Stack, we hear more from our customers about how they're using Azure Stack, what they want to see in terms of roadmap items from both Cisco and from Microsoft. And we think we have a better solution today now than what we talked about a year ago at this conference. Now, how many of you today have heard about Cisco's unified computing system? Hands up. Okay, some of you, that's great, appreciate that. If you're not aware, Cisco started to design the unified computing system back in the 2007-2008 timeframe. And it was at a point in time where many customers like yourself were telling us challenges around inability to enforce policies, performance-related issues, and so forth. And the solutions in the market at that time just simply didn't meet what was needed for those environments. And in fact, they were trying to adapt solutions to try to drive virtualized workloads. So we thought, let's take a different approach. And so we brought in a bunch of engineers, and we brought in a guy named Ed Bugnon. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because he was one of the founders of VMware. And we brought Ed in, and we said, look, if you're going to design a system from the ground up to maximize performance of VMs and automate the performance of a server, what would that need to look like? What kind of criteria would you need to have? If you think about it for an Azure Stack environment, all the Azure services run in a VM. So having an architecture designed for VM performance is pretty key. And so we came out of the unified computing system back in the early 2009 timeframe. It's a system that has a proper balance of processor, memory, I/O, and storage, is really leading in terms of being able to drive virtualized workloads. And it also gives you a very flexible architecture. The architecture itself starts with a couple of Nexus switches. Big surprise for Cisco, right? On the 2 Nexus switches we call Fabric Interconnects, we have the UCS Manager software. And the reason why we put it there as opposed to individual servers is we want to set up an environment where we can separate the applications from being hard-coded to individual servers. It also gives us a lot of flexibility, because now we have many different form factors that we can apply into a unified computing system. For Azure Stack, it's C-Series. Rack-optimized servers where the storage is resident within the servers themselves. It's a hyper-converged architecture. But as Microsoft evolves Azure Stack over the next few years, we'll have the ability to add different platforms, different form factors to the solution, starting with Blades, or maybe one of our storage-optimized solutions, the S-Series. So along the way, we'll be able to drive to this design endpoint and commit products and services to help deliver these different form factors into the Azure Stack environment. Now, how many of you have teenagers? Hands up, we're all part of the Help Club, right? We have a 5-step program to help us because we have teenagers. I have 2 of them, by the way. And my son, who's now 19, has been world-class at destroying iPhones. He has sat on them, he stepped on them, he threw one against a wall when he did bad on a science test, he put one in his back pocket and sat into a hot tub and drowned it. I'm comforted by the fact that I can dig into the wreckage of that phone, pull out the SIM card, put it into the new iPhone, and voila, all of the applications, the contacts, and everything have been restored. Same thing for a service profile. A service profile is a SIM card for the unified computing system. It's a feature of the UCS Manager software, and what it restores is the network policy, the storage policy, and the server policy of the individual servers themselves. So when you think about it, and you set up an application on a server, you make all kinds of different decisions. You set up quality of service controls, PXE boot settings, a number of other decisions you make. And then typically you would go to the next server, answer the same questions, the next server, answer the same questions. Well, Cisco thought there's got to be a better way. Can't we make those decisions one time and save it as an electronic file called a service profile? And with that, you can copy and paste that service profile across all the servers in a cluster, guaranteeing you absolute uniformity of how you set up those servers. Pretty critical in an Azure Stack environment. Our Azure Stack system design starts with the C240 M5L, and you can have from 4 to 16 servers now with that configuration. They connect into 2 of our Gen 3 FIs where the UCS Manager software resides, and then two of our top-of-rack switches. All of this sold as a fixed BOM in our configuration. You do have a little bit of flexibility. The number of servers, the choice of Intel processor, the amount of memory, up to 1.5 terabyte of memory, which is the most memory of any server vendor in the Azure Stack community today. And then, of course, storage and various capacities of storage. We also configure in on-site installation services delivered by Cisco Advanced Services and also Cisco Support Services. Now, this is the highest level of support that Cisco provides today, and it provides for you for 24/7 by 4-hour support in most areas of the world, and phone support usually respond within an hour. Okay? What's really key about this, though, is that you can contact either Microsoft or Cisco. They triage the call, and then if that's the right support organization to continue with the call, they'll do that, or they can electronically transfer the call between Microsoft and Cisco, and any data you've provided transfers as well. So it saves you from having to re-answer the same set of questions that you had answered previously, and it ensures that you're never caught in the middle between these two support organizations. And our customers have told us that the support process works very well for them. Now, if you're thinking, hybrid storage is great with spinning disk and NVMe on the cache tier, but I want the Ferrari of Azure Stack systems. I want maximum performance. And so why not have an all flash-based system, in which you still have NVMe at the cache tier, but now we got solid-state disk. You'll note on the chart that the only thing that changed was the server itself. We maintain our standards of fabric interconnects, top-of-rack switches, so you can have standards in your data center as well. Now, you'll be happy to know that we've got customers around the world. Let me highlight just a couple of them for you. Binbox. Binbox is a service provider based in Romania, and they wanted to kind of catch the wave of the enthusiasm of Azure Stack. And so they purchased an Azure Stack from Cisco based on the criteria I spoke of previously, and they started to advertise the fact that they have Azure Stack in their data center. Within 2 months, they had 60 customers that had signed up to move over part of their workloads to the Microsoft Azure Stack system and start taking advantages of the benefits that Azure Stack could provide. Bechtle in Germany is also a services provider. They're also a reseller of systems, not just Cisco's, many others. And they did a deep analysis, and they chose Cisco as their hardware platform of choice. They have connections into about 70, 75 data center CSPs throughout Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and they've been a very strong fan of Azure Stack for the flexibility it provides, the uniformity of the setup, and the performance it delivers. OpenLine is a company based in the Netherlands, and they've seen 30% growth over the past year. So they wanted to be able to take advantage of the ability of moving those Azure services closer to their data. And of course, GDPR forces that the data stays within their data center, but they also have applications they want to update. Take advantage of adding in new front ends to those applications, make them more easier for use within their data center environment themselves. Now, Data protection is always important, right? There's been lots of announcements this week as far as what Azure can do around protecting your data. But when you think about customer-specific data, that's the type of data that a lot of the government regulations are pointing to. That data oftentimes can't leave the data center. So how do you back it up? Well, we partnered with our friends at Commvault and developed a solution that provides for a low-cost, on-site data protection solution based on our S3260 platform, or C-Series platforms, where you can back up your Azure Stack system. And there's policies set up that you define how you just want to back up the data in the VMs, perhaps the whole Azure Stack infrastructure itself. You can back up onto the S3260. And then if you've got multiple Azure Stack systems, we've proven how you can back up one Azure Stack system to another. So it gives you lots of flexibility here. If you have questions about Commvault and some of their advantages in the marketplace, I would encourage you after the presentation to go by the Commvault booth, talk to the experts there, and discover for yourself how they can solve some of your IT data protection challenges. Now, I'd like to break up the program just for a minute here. I hope you'll join me in welcoming a friend of mine up to the stage. If you could give a round of applause to Daniel Savage, please, from Microsoft. Daniel?
Thank you, John.
Ah, great. Now, you might have noticed Daniel's a good Scotsman, right? So am I. I'm just a couple generations removed. But Daniel and I have a dream. And the dream is that Scotland will return to the World Cup, hopefully in the next 4 years. And it's good to have a dream, because if you have a dream, you have a goal. And Scotland's got to score a lot of goals to get back to the World Cup, I assure you.
I really sound like that.
I kind of fake it a little bit. I better have to have a couple drinks. Good Scotsman, we drink a lot. So, Daniel, we've been working together for over a year now. Azure Stack was announced at this conference last year. Can you give the audience a flavor for how Azure Stack has evolved over the last year?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. And I appreciate being here. Thank you for everyone showing up. As John referred to, we've been producing updates on a monthly basis, and Azure Stack has been evolving throughout this year. As you would have seen this year, you see things we're evolving what our scale is, so we now support 16 nodes. We are working on our multi-scale unit story. We're bringing new service to Azure Stack. We talked about IoT Hub and Event Hubs. So it's been an interesting year. The most interesting thing is the number of customers that we actually have been on board in both Cisco customers and in the Azure Stack population in general. So learning from customers, understanding their use cases has been really what's been kind of driving what's been going on this year.
Yeah, it's really been great, the growth we've seen in Azure Stack, not just in Europe, I referred to a couple times, here in the States and also in Asia Pacific as well. It's been really phenomenal. Can you tell us a little about the working relationship that Cisco and Microsoft have had over the past year and through the development of Azure?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about this last night. We were having dinner, and to try and explain what a co-engineering relationship is to customers is really hard. And we co-engineering, well, in the past, what we used to do is Microsoft would produce a reference architecture, and partners would go and build a solution. When we co-engineer, it means we have engineers working on both sides, delivering the solution. We meet every week. Okay? John's texting me every morning. Okay? As we're working on customer solutions to build these things. So we both have skin in the game in delivering things to you. So the co-engineering relationship, one, it's hard to explain, but it's really fruitful for you, the customer. I got a lot of customers come up to me and say, what do I do when something goes wrong? Who do I call? And honestly, if we're doing our job, which I think we are, it really doesn't matter. Okay? You can call me, you can call John or Cisco or Microsoft, and you will get the right answers to those things. So it's been really fruitful from a co-engineering perspective.
Yeah. And I think we have a lot to look forward to in the next year ahead. I know some of the roadmaps that you've talked about this week, we're looking forward to working with you on. And so I think it's going to be a really strong relationship, not just for this next year, but years to come in the future.
Absolutely, I agree. So Microsoft plans in 6-month semesters. We're about to plan for our next semester, which is going to run January through July next year. So we'll be meeting with Cisco. We talk about the customers that are coming up with requests. So things that we're working on, and there's two kind of main vectors that we think about is what are we doing for scale, dear to John's heart. So we're working on a multi-scale unit that's in development to increase our scale. The other thing is what are the services we bring to Microsoft. I mentioned two of them, IoT Hub and Event Hubs are things. So you'll continue to see us look at our scale and the services, and that's the things we're planning for right now.
So it sounds like we have a lot to look forward to in the next year, and the presentation, I'm sure next year at Ignite will have a lot more detail around some of the plans that Daniel just talked about. Daniel, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. So I'm often asked, is there a industry standard benchmark around Azure Stack? And the answer is no, there's not. The best way to do it would be to purchase a couple different Azure Stack systems, take a completely unified workload and run them on both systems and see how the performance is. Now, that's a big investment. Failure of doing that, though, you can take representative workloads that you plan to run on the Azure Stack system, such as SQL Server, and run them on different hardware and see how the performance is, or look at industry standard benchmarks. And so we just posted, back in June of this year, the most recent TPCH benchmark from SQL Server 2017 running on Linux. And once again, we showed leading performance. This is really due to the design of processor, memory, and I/O within the unified computing system. And you can see how we perform with the C240M5 server, which is resident within the UCS system, versus one of our competitors. Now, this isn't just one benchmark we've done. We've actually had a long history of #1 world record benchmarks with our friends at Microsoft, and currently we hold 7 world record benchmarks for SQL Server. So if you're looking at SQL Server to be a workload on Azure Stack, you might consider taking a look at these benchmarks as simply one data point to consider when you're making comparisons between different hardware vendors in the industry today. Now, Dave got up here and gave a few minutes of a presentation. I've been talking away. I can imagine you're probably getting a little death by PowerPoint at the moment, right? So I thought I might break things up just a little bit and introduce this next segment with the following video.
Thank you for calling. Your call is very important to us. Please stay on the line to schedule an appointment. Your call is very important to us. Please stay on the line. Your call is very important to us. Please stay on the line. Your call is very important to us. Please stay on the line. Your call is very important to us. Please stay on the line. Your call is very important to us. Please stay on the line. Our offices are now closed. Please call back during regular business hours. Goodbye.
So what we saw in the last video was the fact that a company today has the ability to add nodes to their current Azure Stack system. And they could pick any number of nodes, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many you want to add, up to the maximum configuration now of 16 nodes. So you can purchase the nodes, you can have them placed into your data center, and you think about this, there's often times where finance will come at the end of the quarter and say, hey, we've got some budget, can you spend it right away? Well, now you can buy those nodes, very quickly, or if the Cisco sales rep or partner gets to the end of the fiscal quarter, end of the fiscal year, and they suddenly have lots of discounts, hint, hint, you can buy those extra servers at a lower price point. And so you can have those in your data center, and when it's ready to add a node, you can simply slice open the box, as Jessica did, and place the server into the rack, cable it up, power it up. UCS Manager will auto-discover that server is in place. It will assign the server's profile, that SIM card I talked about before, and establish that that's going to be an Azure Stack node. You then go to the Azure Admin Portal and be able to access the skill unit itself, say add node, key in the server address, press return, and within about 90 minutes, you'll have the Azure Stack files loaded to the server. The server's been established in the cluster, and the system is in the beginnings of rebalancing the entire cluster. When you take that time along with the time to set up UCS Manager, it's about 2.5 hours. So in 2.5 hours, you can add a node to your cluster. It doesn't require you to go and purchase or have professional services come on site. You don't have to worry about statements of work. You don't have to worry about a background check of who's going to come to your data center. You don't have to worry about scheduling it. You can just pop the node in whenever you need it. Now, if you think about this from an aspect of you're in a remote environment, you're on an oil drilling rig in the North Atlantic, you're in some faraway country like outer Mongolia, you might want to have 1 or 2 nodes sitting there in the box or perhaps in the rack itself, already have UCS Manager code applied. You just have to add it to the Azure Stack system when and if you need it. So very simple. We're taking advantage of the Cisco automation capabilities that have been resident in UCS Manager for some time, and we're giving you an ability to manage your own data center the way you want to. Now, 12 nodes is what was the maximum at the conference last year. Of course, now we can add a few nodes, and now you get to a 16-node system. And as you've probably seen earlier this week, on Tuesday, we announced that we are taking orders for 16-node systems for Microsoft Azure Stack. And when you think about the type of system resources that you could have available, almost 900 Intel processor cores in a fully loaded 16-node system, 20.5 terabytes of system memory, because we can configure 1.5 terabytes per system node, the most of anyone else in the industry today, and up to 1.5 petabytes of system storage. Now, you can install this with the 18.10 release from Azure Stack when it comes into the market here next month. And so it really gives you a big platform to be able to do production work. And we're offering this both in the hybrid storage as well as the all-flash Ferrari version that I mentioned earlier. Now, we are working with Microsoft on the road ahead because your journey with Azure Stack isn't a sprint. It's not one cluster in the data center, I'm done. No, you need to think about this as a marathon, in which you initially have a single cluster, and you may have purchased the Commvault-based solution that we have from Cisco today, but probably next year, you'll be able to add multiple scale units. And the UCS Manager can easily accommodate the management of those multiple scale units, so you can manage these scale units from a single screen within your data center. But then when Microsoft enables multiple region support, and say you put a data center in Boston, now we'll have the additional tools such as UCS Central today, or in the very near future, Cisco Intersight, to be able to give you the ability to manage those disparate environments, again, from a single screen. Leveraging the policies, the capabilities of UCS Manager, UCS Central, UCS Director, all uploaded into the Cisco Intersight systems management platform. You continue to expand your workloads. You get into a European subsidiary with London and Frankfurt. Perhaps you go to Tokyo or Sydney, and you have now a worldwide IT infrastructure that you can manage from a single endpoint in the data center, perhaps here in Orlando. Now, we've talked about system architecture. We've talked about performance. We have many different partners that have services that can help you understand more what Azure Stack is, help you plan for an installation, help you with the installation itself, and then post-installation. We at Cisco also have enabled a number of our products that are available in the Azure Marketplace today, including WebEx, including Tektration, and other companies that we partner with. I thought it'd be really good if we could pick one of these applications, perhaps AppDynamics, and have AppDynamics come up and explain the type of IT challenges they see, how AppDynamics can solve those issues and problems, and the fact that it will soon be available on Azure Stack will help benefit you all. So with that, I'd like to introduce Greg to come on up on stage.
Hey, thank you. Well, good morning. So I'm Greg Ostrowski. I'm one of the regional CTOs at AppDynamics. I'm based up in New York market, and I get the luxury of working with a lot of customers as they start to embark down this age of digital transformation, or even try to keep their business sound against the folks trying to disrupt them out of business, so to speak. Like we just had a slide up there talking about, the Ubers of the world and Airbnb and all the other folks that kind of step into the other businesses. So when you start thinking about the overall area, right? So the application space is, and this is really where it boils down to, is most businesses nowadays, the business is run by their applications. In the old days in retail, it used to be you walk into a store. Now you have an application, and if you don't get a good user experience out of that application, you can basically delete it and move to something else in a matter of minutes. So the whole idea here is the application world is getting extremely complex, and as you start to add more services and you want to compete with technology, you start adding more components into your applications, and they start to grow and become more and more complex. And how to manage them, how to understand what's going on, and how they impact your business is really what the key boils down to. So when you start thinking about, now I'm going to start moving into the cloud environment, I'm going to start taking advantage of things to, a couple of reasons. One is you want to reduce costs from a business perspective, and the other one is that you want to be able to jump into technology spaces or add new technology into your applications at a much faster rate. Ultimately this makes it more of a distributed environment. It creates more dependencies because you may start building in third-party dependencies. If anybody's doing some type of e-commerce, generally you don't process your own credit cards, you're tapping into a third-party service that you need to incorporate into your app. So all these pieces here ultimately tie into how that user has an experience with your application. And at the end of the day, you have to have extremely fast cycles. I had the luxury of working in the mobile space for about the last 18 years, and it's crazy to me how quickly you have to respond to end user requirements to be able to deploy an application at a very fast pace. Otherwise, somebody else will beat you to it. I sit on an advisory board on a couple companies as well, and I'm always challenging one of the CTOs at the company because he tends to challenge what the customers are asking for. He always says, "Oh, I don't believe this is a very valid." It's like, well, if you don't do it, somebody else will. So you always have to be very quick on how you iterate and build this out. So some of the things in our product not only just gives you the ability to see what the performance is like of your application, but also understand the value that it's providing to your end customer and your business. So when you start looking at migrating to the cloud and you look at the benefits, obviously you have a lot of technical benefits. One is it's your cost savings is always top of mind. Productivity and being able to drive technology into your applications a bit faster is a very big benefit of the cloud. But on the business side, you have a lot of business related items as well. Obviously costs and driving revenue up is a key part. But when it comes down to it, you have a balance of what's going on between the technology and what's going on between the business relevancy of your migration to the cloud. So understanding how all of that works together, is really where we come into play and where we think we excel. So when you start thinking about that cloud move, and I remember talking to a lot of folks that are just saying, yeah, we're going to move to the cloud, and it's pitched as being overly simplistic, but at the end of the day, you don't want to just focus on the move. You want to focus on the pre and post areas of what needs to be done in the cloud and do some work up front. So when you start thinking about what to consider, look at that planning state for about 12 weeks. You start to analyze what's going on in your environment. And then you have that move period. But then the key part is you want to validate that your move was done correctly and that the move was done with the right impact to the business. So thinking of it from that point of view, you have many different players that come into the mix of who is interested in what's going on with this migration. Your operations folks are going to want to make sure that the things are up and running better than they were before. The developers are going to be building out applications or running their applications, and they want to know that their code is up to snuff and not requiring too many different dependencies that they're not aware of. And then lastly, the folks who run the business are going to want to say, okay, we paid all this money for you guys to migrate to the cloud. You said it was going to do this. Prove it to me. And that's really where the whole cycle is going to run through. You're going to plan, do the move. Everybody kind of works 25 hours a day on that move period, and then post-move, you want to just validate what you've done is correct. So the overall process, generally we're looking at about 6 months, 5.5 to 6 months. So when you start thinking about, and this is where I'll get a little bit of a product overview for you, but when you start thinking about understanding your applications, one of the things that we do, first thing when you implement AppDynamics out of the box, is we give you an accurate understanding of what your application looks like. So we'll build out a map that shows you every piece of dependency that an application has. Now this could be a container for Kubernetes, it could be a database, it could be a server, JVMs, you name it, it's going to be in there. And the cool part is as you migrate to the cloud and then you start to make modifications to your application to add more dependencies to it or more services to it, we automatically update that map for you as well. And you'll be able to see all the path that the application is going to take. We monitor everything and keep track of everything that's going on so that you'll see everything that's happening with that application as well. But the cool part, and the one part that really differentiates us in the market, is that we actually go and follow the user journey. So we'll give you the path of what it looks like as your end user. And the idea here is that we know that the customer experience is basically the new currency of today. So you need to make sure that that experience is top-notch. So you need to see exactly what your customers are seeing and what your end users are seeing. So we'll be able to log and track for you all the way from the minute they log into your application all the way till they successfully transact and convert to a revenue dollar to your business. The other thing too is you got to think about refactoring applications. So as you go from pre and post, so we're able to actually give a timestamp and do a snapshot of what your application looked like before the migration. And as you refactor, we'll be able to give you a snapshot of what it looks like after the migration. And again, that's around validation to ensure that your refactoring of what your application has been done correctly. And the idea here too is that if you start to think about just a lift and shift mindset, which was a big pitch several years ago, lift and shift is just really a fallacy. You're going to think about something that you really can't comprehend as far as what you're doing from point A to point B. It's not apples and oranges. I mean, not apples to apples. It's more like apples and oranges. So being able to understand and refactor your applications properly allows you to take advantage of all those cloud services that you're moving to the cloud in the first place. So the way we kind of do things is we'll able to set you up baselines. So out of the box as well, we set dynamic baselines and understand what your business is like and understand what your normal may be. And the way I kind of equate, and I just had a meeting in Atlanta yesterday, the key difference here is that you think about baselining and monitoring of being, okay, this is going to be my deviations that I'm going to expect for the time of the life of the application. But what we do here is incorporate a machine learning algorithm that allows us to learn what your normal is during every period of the time. So in the event that 9 a.m., normal may be within a certain range. At 5 p.m., it may be with a different range. At 2 a.m. in the morning, it's different. As well as folks that are in the specific areas of like retail. So you got Black Friday coming along, there's going to be a massive spike. So understanding what those normals are and what those baselines look like are really critical. So understanding that pre-move and post-move becomes critical as well, right? So that understanding that during your pre-move, everything was fine, right? And this is where things get a little tricky, is that if everything's fine and you're still migrating to the cloud, you really have to prove high value then as you go back. And then when you set a baseline and you go out post-move and you realize that post-move things didn't exactly work out as well as I wanted it to, you can actually course correct very quickly and ensure that the ultimate goal is to keep that end user experience top-notch running through the way they run their applications. Forrester always talks about how most cloud objectives don't monitor what's going on in the business, and that's really where we come into play, is ensure that the business revenue is not impacted, or we help you positively impact the business revenue. So by having accelerated cloud migration, our idea here is to give you full confidence in that migration, because we're going to give you the tools during the planning stage of your migration, during the migration, and post-migration. And the whole mindset there is that we want you to be confident that you have the right information, both not from just a technology standpoint, but also into the business side of things, so you know what the bottom line revenue needs to be and how it gets impacted by the technology that you use. I've done some work with companies. We talk to guys like McKinsey, and they talk about how the business leaders don't view most of their IT staff as being ones to help them digitally transform into the future. This is where we're trying to get you to be in a position where you can actually be that leader and thought leader within your company to drive your company through its transformation stages. So from that whole pre-plan moving, I'll go through this real quick again. So, understanding what your app architecture looks like, an application mapping is critical. So understanding all those dependencies, showing every component, whether it's in-house, third-party, cloud, however you need it to be, you want to be able to see that from an application view. Now, this is a very simple map that gets built, updated dynamically as you need to be, as you need to grow and shrink as as your app becomes more or less complex. But the whole idea here is that it gives you a very simple view that everyone can understand. So you'll see it down to the tiers, the nodes, the applications, the databases, and then you'll be able to see what's happening from a red, yellow, green status too. So here everything seems to be running quite well, but when you start seeing an area of an application that's starting to impact, you see that area flashing, and then you could drill right down into that area and find out directly down to the line of code that's causing the issue. Or it could be a network issue, or it could be database issue, or however it needs to be. The whole idea is that this helps you knock down all those silos in your organization so that you know where the exact pinpoint issue is happening with that. Also making sure that you understand the resource decisions that are being made so you can identify the utilization of how things are going to be functioning. So as you want to see what's happening with a particular application within a specific database, you're able to see the utilization that is happening there and do a trend analysis so you know how it's going to trend throughout the period of time, and that whatever changes you're going to be making to the future, you know that you're going to be able to handle that and drive the accurate path to move forward and perform your migration. And you can see we got a lot of customer quotes on here as well, so that this is we have. Is there any AppDynamics customers in the room here, by the way? You may be, but you may not know. But we have quite a few. Anybody folks from the financial vertical, financial sector space? All right, I'm from New York, so I usually get those guys in my wheelhouse. But anyway, so being able to give you the accurate decisions on resources here while you do pre and post move is critical, and this is really just giving you the right ammunition as you start to scale out your environment. And this is where, like I mentioned before, this is where things get to be very interesting for us, is that you want to understand how this impacts your business. And I said that many times here, but it's really a critical part in my mindset. Most technology budgets come from the business leaders. So as you start to show them more value into your business, this is where you get more budget for your technology. So by understanding the business transactions, we actually build these dashboards for you. Just right out of the box, we have several that are there and you can customize. But you'll be able to see the business transaction view of the entire application process or user journey that they had taken through the app. So here you see, as soon as they fetch the catalog on the web browser, you see that there's a problem. So you know that translates to not just being a technology issue. That means that, okay, the guy who runs the business is going to say, there's a problem because people can't see our catalog. Gives you the ability to really rapidly turn around and correct that. And then as you go through the area where you add to cart, and then the other part that's a problem is a checkout. Starting to see slow checkout process. At the end of the day, if you're not bringing money back into the company, that's going to be a problem. So having this dashboard layout that's able to be delivered to your business leaders that you can see is very simplified. It's not something that's going to be talking about speeds and feeds or lines of code. It's something that your business leaders can look at to understand what's going on with their business elements as they really need to understand and value. And NASDAQ is a huge customer of ours, and they love this factor that they understand what's going on when it comes to the dollars and cents of what's happening with their company. So from the validation perspective, we want to give you full stack monitoring in the cloud. This way you have a very strong visibility into what's happening on your app as you did a post-migration. So you can see here, giving you a clear migration shows you everything going on, holistic monitoring. And the whole idea here is that we want to give you real-time data that allows you to act quickly. So there's no point of migrating to the cloud just to wait 30 days to make your updates, to make optimizations or refinements. You got to do that real time so that you're not impacting the bottom line, which is your end user or your customer experience. So by having a full stack view of monitoring what's happening in your cloud migration is extremely critical. So this here helps you, understand from a technology point of view, what's happening with your post-migration. And then I can't say this enough, but having a dashboard up there that shows you that you're meeting your end user expectations is highly critical. Having all these different dashboards that you can show of what's going on in your user base is critical. You see at the bottom left-hand corner there, I have just a global slide there. If you have a global scale application running, and you want to see what's happening in specific countries, or you have certain calls coming in, you can actually pinpoint right down to a geographical location of what's going on in your application, so that you know if it's an issue that might be happening in the United States or might be happening in the UK. You can pinpoint it down so you can really provide your business leaders the information that they need to understand, to say, okay, this is an issue that we have. It's only impacting the UK right now, so let's focus on that and get that resolved. So that way, when you think about it from the, knocking down those silos and providing real visibility into the technology from your lines of businesses, having them understand what the full impact of the issue is really, the key element here. So, here's about acting quick, responding quick, and ensuring that when something does go south, because we all know that, things happen to break every now and then. When things do go south, you have the data and the information to attack that quickly. And then here's just a little slide that I pull up that shows our business IQ analytics piece. That this is the part that really takes the monitoring piece to another level by giving you these real-time metrics towards the business. And if you look at I don't know if I have a laser on this thing here. If you look at the bottom slide here, you have two different pre and post migration slides, and I'll read the numbers for you at the bottom. The very bottom, you show an overall conversion rate of about 5%. Post-move, by monitoring those conversion rates, we're able to show that our move to the cloud gave us about a 15% conversion rate. So that's effectively a 300% increase of conversions for the application after you moved it to a cloud. Now, the key part here is that, like I said earlier, you have lines of businesses that are going to be the ones who dictate how much money you get ultimately for your IT spend. I mean, if the business is not doing well, IT is one of the first things that gets cut. When you start showing them all these positive results that you do, you start getting more funding for your projects and more way things start to drive there. So here, by giving them a real-time dashboard to show them what goes on from a dollars and cents view, they're tracking conversion rates, but you can also track abandonment rates as well, which is another key element that we see. So as people are going through their application and using it, they might drop off at a specific spot. You can pick up the trends there and change your UI to the app and make things flow a little bit better. So what we want to do at the end of the day is we want to accelerate your move to the cloud. We want to help, as you start to move to Microsoft Azure. We want to accelerate that by giving you the right tools, the right information, both from a technology perspective as well as a business perspective. And then we also want to just highlight that, we can't stress this enough, that the user experience, that's like a $100 bill out there. So if you want to throw away $100 bills, you're throwing away user experience too. But you make sure that you always want to keep that front of mind. And that way, that helps drive, everything that you guys are working for. And then lastly, proving that the migration was true to what you promised is critical, so that you have those elements that not just show you that, hey, look, we save money, but we also help the company make money. And that's really how we envision how we help customers as they migrate to the Azure cloud. We love being part of Cisco, because Cisco's been a great acquisition for us, or they acquired us, I should say. Being part of Cisco has been great because it's been able to help us invest heavily into the machine learning space and be able to do predictive analysis and things like that from our monitoring view, just to make this work extremely well. So that being said, I think that's going to wrap things up for us this morning. I thank you for your time. I'll be around for any questions if anybody had any questions. Thank you. You have anything else?